What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mack here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I got a wonderful episode with the owner of an amazing American company, and that is Kryptek. And we got Butch Whiting on, and we are going to be talking all about Kryptek, how it got started, how it is going, and all about America freedoms, 2A, hunting, and a whole lot more. Butch, thank you so much for coming on to this episode.
Johnny Mack, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. It is always a good time when you get to talk about all those different topics. I feel like in this world, in this day and age, it has been so taboo to actually be able to speak what you believe. And there's in this world so many people that aren't being true to themselves and being true to this world. And that's an issue. When we become our real authentic self, then it opens the door and gives permission for a lot of other people to be themselves as well. So thank you for coming on and being
It's super easy for Kryptek to be truthful about all those things because it's so woven into the fiber of who we are as a brand and as individuals. So
Yeah, I love it. Well, let's talk about that for a second. So, Butch, what your former military, how did Kryptek come about? For those people who are listening to this podcast that they're on the fence about what camo company they want to purchase from or different things like that. What's the history of Kryptek and why?
well, the idea of Kryptek started in combat. Actually, myself and the other founder, Claycorn, were fighting and flying Apache attack helicopters in northern Iraq. And when we weren't doing missions, we were daydreaming about the outdoor industry and being in the outdoor industry. And basically, it was about reminiscing about previous hunts and sharing, stories about hunts and and talking about, improvements that could be made to gear. And at that same time, there was a whole plethora of improvements that were being made across a bunch of different areas, but primarily in apparel. And some of those improvements we saw and said, that's a no brainer. That should be in the hunting market. We so this concept and idea of starting to spiral features and functions out of primarily special operations improvements is kind of where it all started. But really, it was about, how can we get in the outdoor industry? What can we do that'll sustain our lives, our wives, our kids, and really be a lifestyle by design, where even when you're working, you're still doing something you enjoy, and you also have a lot more time to actually go focus on, whether you're in the backcountry on an expeditionary hunt or in Africa or whatever, under the, just that would become the center of gravity for the business. And so it was just a concept, an idea, and it grew based off of some folks that are in the industry that had tried to do this tactical hunting crossover. These guys were from Cabela's, and they got a hold of the business model, and they said, "We absolutely love this idea. We love the demographic that you guys represent, and we'd like to talk to you about doing a program." And so, you know, Cryptic really started with that phone call from Cabela's, and it was all a theoretical concept. They really fell in love with like one sentence in the entire business model, which was to spiral features and functions out of special operations apparel into the civilian hardcore backcountry hunting world. And yeah, for a number of years, the only place that you could buy Cryptic was at Cabela's. They launched, and that's back when they used to send out the catalogs.
Yeah,
I
the
don't know
big
if
old
that,
fat catalogs. Yep.
yeah, that was back when everybody would get those and they'd sit in the bathroom next to the toilet for a year, right? Those were the good days. Those were the good days before social media.
That is
so,
hilarious. Yeah,
so yeah, that's where it kind of started, man, was just soldiers sitting around fighting our nation's battles, missing another hunting season, missing another opening day. I can't tell you how many hunting seasons I missed after 9/11, but yeah, it was just about a passion for the hunting world, and then an idea, and we got a couple big breaks out of it, and that's how it kicked off and started.
man, that is so cool. How many years did you spend in the military?
10 years, 9 months, and 6 days.
You sound just like my father-in-law. He'll even count it down to like the minutes and stuff like that. What branch and what was your role?
So it was U.S. Army, aviation, flying Apache attack helicopters, and did combat tours to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And yeah, I spent a lot of time downrange. Part of the reason why I separated, because I had at the time, I still have two daughters, but they were 6 and 4, and I was gone 4 out of 6 years and 3 out of 4 years. So it was, when I say lifestyle by design, and starting an outdoor company that could support the family, was also being there as a father and a husband that was a part of the decision cycle. And I loved every minute of it. I loved flying, especially Apaches. The attack helicopter community was, kind of really my home, and it's the only thing I've ever loved more than my wife is the H-64 Apache longbow. Um, so it was a tough decision, but now I look back on it and it was right. And the mission of that aircraft is really similar to what we're talking about. A hunter being a hunter. You're, deploying the most lethal hunting platform on the battlefield. And so, I was pretty good at it.
I love it.
So I enjoyed it a lot. But yeah, I was a commissioned officer. I actually commanded Renegade Troop 43 ACR. And that's where I met Claycorn. He was one of my junior warrant officers, who's the other founder in Cryptic. So yeah, we flew a ton of missions together, and we shot a lot of shit, and did the Lord's work, and won our nation's battles. It's part of the reason why this whole recent administration and this absolutely disgusting withdrawal from Afghanistan, how it was handled by the Biden administration, was so extremely painful.
Mm,
To see
yeah.
how much time, energy, and the sacrifices that we made as individuals and as a nation as a whole, and to see it just completely, just an unbelievable embarrassment, unbelievable. So that was a real personal deal. And I don't know if you've ever slowed down and looked at, like, I know you like cryptic altitude gear, but if you look at the naming convention on that stuff, you have the Torah collection, the Bora
Hmm.
collection, the Takur, the Gar. All the pieces in that were all named after mountain battles in Afghanistan that I personally had a role or responsibility in. So that entire collection, the names got broken apart, but if you put them back together, you could find what they stand for in Afghanistan. So not only am I talking about my own personal experience in Afghanistan, I actually was on the ground as an Apache pilot in Tora Bora with the 3PP CLI out of Canada when they were blowing caves and exploiting it and looking for certain DNA on folks. But we got that built into our collection. I mean, it's you got to have a little bit of a Rosetta Stone to figure out some of our naming conventions and so on, but they all have meaning, and that collection had a whole lot of meaning.
That is
So
incredible. I've always wondered because, you know, you go through and you look at all these different names of these articles of clothing, and it's like, what's the meaning behind it? And so it is so much fun. I think that is very important and powerful. Is like people need to know that stuff, and it's good that you're sharing that. And I'm glad. Makes me want to do my research a whole lot more on what what pieces of clothing I'm buying and what does it represent. Did you name these pieces specifically based off of what they represent within the battlefield as well? So, like, is a Bora or the Torah specific to what that environment was like, or any background on
yeah,
that?
I mean, Tora Bora. Yep, Tora Bora is a gnarly, gnarly mountain range. And basically, that whole collection was really developed specifically for, you know, a mountaineering type of deployment. I mean, people use it everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but the fabrics that were used in that are super, super high end out of Switzerland, Scholler, and it was printed in Germany. Everything about it is just super high end. But ultimately, it was that connection about, personal experiences and the most challenging experiences that I've faced in a mountain environment, and from an apparel perspective, where would this make sense? What would have meaning behind it? And so, Takur Gar, which is broken in half, that's actually a mountain itself. It's also known as Roberts Ridge during Operation Anaconda. Um, that was the name of that mountain piece. The Arma mountain range, is a collection of all these different mountains. I guess to answer your question, it was more just about austere, super austere mountain environments that I was exposed to in combat that represented themselves well with regards to the quality of the collection and where we wanted it to go and what we wanted it to represent.
Man,
So
that's pretty awesome. I love that. You said you've always been before we recorded that you've always been a lifetime hunter and that it's been ingrained in your DNA of your family and all that stuff. Being in combat and going overseas and fighting for your country and fighting for freedom, what is it like coming back and seeing the country the way it is? And then how does, and this is a big question and multiple parts to it. So, and then how does hunting soothe your soul or settle your soul when it comes to dealing with PTSD or trauma or any of the emotions that come back when you return back from war?
well, I grew up in a family where hunting was so important. It was like the major vacation that we took. We didn't go to Disneyland or the beach or any of these places. We went to hunting camp, right? And it was a major event that everybody looked forward to more than anything else. And it's back when you could take your schoolwork and they actually had paper assignments and textbooks. And so I'd be doing homework every night, underneath the light of either a wall tent or in a camper maybe or whatever. But it truly was some of the best times of my life, and it shaped who I am as a person and that passion that I have, for hunting came from those family experiences, and it was also extremely meaningful. It was about filling the freezer, putting meat in the freezer. It was purpose driven. It was never a trophy hunt type mentality. Um, but you know, I went through a lot of time where I wasn't able to go, obviously, because of the military, and there was always that beckoning, and there was always, that in the back of my mind, especially when I knew that my family members and my friends were out, opening day of mule deer season or opening day of elk season, and I was in a third world shithole turning, bad people in the dirt. Um, but those same skill sets that I learned growing up and spending in the backcountry hunting also applied very well for me into that mission set that I was, the biggest, I think, honor I'll ever have in my life is leading U.S. soldiers in combat. Um, in terms of like, going into combat and, being deployed, how that kind of compares, it really, I guess there's a lot of anxiety, maybe like you can't sleep the night before opening day or whatever. Um, I wouldn't say you get used to it, but after years of downrange deployment, you get accustomed to it. Um, there's nothing that is real comparable to being in a real world gunfight. There's no real comparison to that at all. The sacrifices become super evident. I can remember right after 9/11, we were geared up and I was in the 101st Airborne and we were going into Afghanistan to go to Kandahar to take over from the second MU, the second Marine Expeditionary Unit. And that was one of those moments that I look back on and I had, one of my daughters was 2 years old. Um, and you don't know if you're coming back, you don't know how it's going to go, so it's a super surreal deal. Um, in fact, I put together a little wooden rocking horse like the night before I left because I wasn't sure that if it would get put together otherwise. And to this day, that rocking horse still sits in the living room of my house.
Wow.
My wife still has that. We're hopeful that, after the girls used it all the time they did, that we'll have grandchildren someday down the road here. But uh, yeah, I mean, the level of sacrifice that really played out, not just from the guys that deployed, but their wives and their children, it's so underappreciated unless you've lived it. And everybody says, I thank you for your service. And I used to put a yellow sticker on there. But just to have this current administration just kind of like, pull out the way they did and leave all these American passport carrying folks behind, it really is just like sickening. I mean, I guess that I compare it to having seen and heard about how Vietnam vets were received when they came back from Vietnam. They were spit on, they were, just told they were pieces of shit, whatever. We didn't have that. When we came back, everybody was hurrah and, go America, USA, USA. But I guess the only analogy I have is like what Biden did and General Miley and his administration this summer has to be similar in some sort of fashion to what occurred back in Vietnam. So,
Y-
yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or
No,
not.
you did a great job on the first part. The second part, just to follow up, is do you find hunting is something that soothes your soul? Like, when you go afield, is it something that puts you at ease, or because hunting has the power to heal. Nature is healing in itself, and whether we're standing barefoot on the grass or the dirt, or we're out in the mountains, it's a spiritual
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely, 100%. I think that some of the most iconic church sessions that I've ever done have been in the backcountry, 100 miles away from church. You
Yeah.
know, um, the fact is that I also think it depends on nothing to take away nothing from solo hunters. I've solo hunted myself, but I don't enjoy that as much as I do of being in a hunting camp with great people and great family and great friends, and the memories that are made around that, whether it's one best friend or it's, four or five really good friends. Um, I had a really, really good hunting partner who just a few weeks ago, his father passed away on the day that we were supposed to leave to go hunting. And I totally thought like, "Oh, he's not going to make it to camp." Well, 2 days later, he showed up in camp because he was looking for exactly what we're talking about, you know,
Yeah.
and that this was his way to kind of, absorb all this. And it was like this incredibly emotional hunt, on a number of fronts. But I personally enjoy hunting the most when it's with my girls. I mean, bar none. If somebody said, "All right, dude, you have a choice. You can either, hunt the most premium tags guaranteed every year, but you can never hunt with your girls ever again, or you can just hunt with your girls and get what tags you can and take them on adventures." I take the latter every time. I
Yeah.
mean, I still get excited like I'm 10 years old or 11 years old again when I'm sitting next to them trying to coach them in. And I actually feel like a brand new hunter does when I'm hunting with them. And that when you feel that, and people always say, "Oh, well, it's about filling the freezer. It's, conservation." That's all true, but it's also a lot of fun. I mean, don't downplay the fact that hunting's a challenge. You know exactly where the meat's coming from, all the way from the time of harvest to processing to put in the freezer till mom needs it and they go out and grab it and make a recipe. I mean, it's like this all connected uh, uh, experience, you know?
I totally agree. How old are your
So,
daughters?
one just turned 18 and the other one's about to finish college and she's 21. So
Awesome.
they're the best times I've had though is with them, uh, in the outdoors,
Oh,
hunting, primarily fishing.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I don't have those experiences yet. So I have three boys. My oldest is going to turn 7 December 22nd, and then I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And just yesterday, or no, this was Saturday, 2 days ago, I looked at my boy. It's late season blacktail that's still open. Had two more days for a rifle hunt. I looked at my son Carter. I go, "Carter, I really want to hunt with you." And he looked at me and he's like, "Can we go next year, Dad? I just want to hang out with the family." And I'm like, "Okay, of course, absolutely." So I don't have those opportunities with those kids yet to build that, but I know exactly what you're saying when it comes to the community aspect, because I actually feel like the kid and the mentee when I'm going afield, because this idea of I don't really like hunting solo either. I enjoy the community aspect. I enjoy the connection. And this is why I'm so big on the mentorship as conservation platform, is this idea that the hunt continues and it even expands even more when you get the opportunity to teach somebody how to do something and you see them succeed, whatever type of gain it is, whether it's actually shooting the animal or having an aha moment and then their eyes just light up. That is one of the most rewarding feelings that you can ever get. And being a school teacher, you see that all the time, when, especially in PE, when I'm teaching a kid how to throw or kick or how to do something specific, and all of a sudden they have success. That is the hook. Those are the things that hook not just ourselves and return us back to this innocence of why we love doing what we do and the purity of it. But that is how we make a difference in this world. And when we hook the heart, we hook the whole person. And they're never going to forget that. And that is a special thing. And I can't wait to have opportunities like that with my own children in the future. Hearing you talk about that, it's like getting
Yeah.
me all giddy and excited.
Yeah. It should be exciting for you. What I've found and seen when it comes to, young families that you have, the getting the entire family involved really hinges on the mom. If the mom is going to hunting camp, and whether she's going to hunt or she's just going to be there, take pictures, or just be along for the ride, the whole entire family goes. And I've seen it over and over and over. And then I've also seen, where you'll have a family where mom doesn't hunt and certain siblings don't hunt, but they've got a sibling that does. But I've never found one where mom goes to camp and the whole crew doesn't go. You know what I mean? It's
That
funny how that works.
that is really good advice. My wife was gonna go on her very first hunt 2 days after Christmas this December. We were gonna take her on a duck hunt, and this was gonna be like this big moment. And now the issue is with duck hunting is how do you get a babysitter at 3 in the morning as you're as you're going to get set up and all that. Um,
Yeah,
so
right?
that is
Yeah.
really good advice, and I am going to take that into consideration about how I go about planning things and how I talked with my wife. Because when I became a hunter, my life became transformed. I became a better husband, a better father, a better employee, a better friend. Everything in my life just blossomed because I took up hunting and I understood the power in which it has. That is something that I need to learn how to communicate with now my spouse, because her priority having little kiddos is like, well, my priority is to make sure they survive and they're thriving and they're growing and learning. And this is a really good perspective and an aha moment for myself right now. Is like, this is not just a male dominated industry or sport or activity or lifestyle. It is a family. It is all about the wholeness, the connectivity, and I feel like this is something that we need to return back to the roots of humanity in, as we have these roles, and no greater love than that a man has than lay down his life for another, and whatever that means, whether it's the military or providing food for your family or whatever, or just, you know, the Bible also says, train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. And I feel like that is just a hinge of hunting and family within this world.
It really is a family sport, in my opinion, and amen. I mean, ultimately, I know that a lot of guys have spouses that don't hunt and maybe even children or whatever, but I personally view it as a family activity for sure. And it's, all the different levels, and they're never too young. I can still remember being a couple years old, like just barely faintly, whatever time you start to have memories, but just from a toddler age running around in hunting camp with family and so on. So, yeah, at the end of the day, if you get that, you got the secret sauce. That's the secret sauce.
That's beautiful. All you listeners out there, make sure to put that in your back pocket, and really chew on that if you're just getting into a relationship with a girlfriend or a spouse or whatever, about to have children. I love it. Butch, let's shift gears here for a second and let's talk about what's actually happening in this world right now in America. The ports are backed up. There is this delay in products that are coming from overseas, and with a lot of things that are happening in America, if it's not built in America or made in America, we're having a lot of issues. What's going
Mhm.
on? Is that going to affect Cryptech in the future of how you guys go about things, or what's your plan of navigating the politics of this world?
Oh, that's a fair question and a good question because it's significant and serious. I mean, there's not just the logistical challenges, there's also, discussion about war and where that's going to happen. And so you have to take all these things into consideration, the facts. There's also major factory disruptions without logistics where factories are closed down 50% capacity or less. Um, Extremely troubling times right now. We'll face some inventory challenges here in short order. We've got inventory that should have been here in July, August, October that's still not here yet. And every brand that I talk to in the outdoor industry, even if they're doing product that's made in the USA, they've got some sort of supplies or some componentry that is being imported. But apparel itself is a really challenging industry to be in, and to have the level of quality and construction that has become expected, is even more challenge to do domestic US and USA made. We do have USA mills and USA fabrics. We've got major programs we do with the US military, both Navy Special Warfare and Army Special Warfare. But on the, let's call it just civilian technical side, to have the quality of construction, and welded seams, and all these things that a user may or may not really appreciate or understand, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to duplicate here in the US. And that's not the result of like one administration or two administrations. This is a set that's been put in place for like the last couple decades, 20 years, and driving offshore, driving production offshore. Um, so you asked the question, well, what are we doing? What are we pivoting? We're standing up additional North American um, construction of different pieces, and trying to get to the level of being as technical as we can with our current super high end factories, so that we're just not dependent. Well, we got a lot of different factories and sourcing all over the world, right? But you know, it has been interesting. And fabrics, just all the way down to fabrics. And believe it or not, right now there's a yarn shortage. You don't hear about that in the news, but there's a freaking yarn shortage. And we're normally on a life cycle or a battle rhythm where we're about 9 months from the time we say PO placed and go till we have product in hand. And that's gone to a year just like that.
Mm.
And so, you know, I don't see this going away like anytime in the rapid near future. It's probably going to last well into 2023, and we'll never come back to where we're at, or where we stand now. So, fortunately for us, we have enough quality inventory to get through what we call the sales season, or right now, Cyber Monday, Black Friday, holiday. But a lot of that super quality, good, meaningful product, in many cases, our shippers can't even tell us exactly where it's at. Like,
Mm.
I know I've got nine containers in Tacoma, Washington that have been there since October 1st, but they can't tell me where at the port, and they can't tell me when. So it'll be very interesting to see when we do start to get our current backlog, um, you know, January, February. Is that going to change the buying behavior of the United States? I don't think it will. I think we're just going to be really heavy on inventory early on next year that will ride into next fall, as we also, have accelerated our order placement to try to get ahead of this logistical backlog.
Mm. Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, as a end user consumer, you go and not just your company, but a lot all over the place. I mean, look at the price of Thanksgiving turkeys. Everything is
Yeah,
limited. I don't know what it's like over there in Idaho right now, but in the state of Washington, it's like, man, my wife and I, we are going down the road of homesteading, and so we bought a freeze dryer this fall and a dehydrator, and we're just those things are just constantly running because not out of fear of not being able to get food, but at the same time, it's like we are in an unprecedented time and age
yeah,
that we don't.
dude. There's a resurrection in all of that self reliance. The ability to can, the ability to dry food, the ability, like I was saying earlier, to go out and fill your own freezer, or go, not to be dependent on the supermarket.
Mhm.
All these skill sets that our grandparents, it was second nature to them. There's been generations that have lost that. And so to go back into food preservation and gardening, all these, call it prepper or survivalist, is kind of like the big thing.
Yeah.
It's become mainstream. Yeah, right. I mean, you're foolish if you aren't doing that stuff, really. There last summer, I got a friend here that has a really super nice chain of garden stores, and they crushed it last year. There was people building gardens on the ditch banks behind their house, just because there was a plot of ground there, and the ditch riders were like, in the nightly news, literally, it says like, "Hey, you don't own that ditch behind your house. Please keep in mind, that's not your property." People had a spot of dirt there planting. Um, I think that's just smart, man. Canning and dehydrating and being able to go collect and, be somewhat more self-reliant. I think it's just good common sense.
Yeah, I mean, in a world that's all about instant gratification, fast food, movies on demand, everything is like at your fingertips. Very rarely are people putting emphasis on on the future and having foresight and vision for the future. you know I like to draw a lot of my knowledge and my foundation from the Bible, and it says, people without vision are going to perish. And
Hmm.
I feel like, being a military guy, the art of war and understanding, there's moves and there's counter moves and there's counter moves, and everything is a chess match and life is a game. And if you can look at it like that and just enjoy it and play the game and have fun and enjoy that, life is happening for us. It's not happening to us. We're not the result of circumstances in our lives, and we get to control and create our own existence in relationship to this world, and that we were meant to thrive, not just exist. This is why hunting and coming back to the root of humanity is so important. And I believe that the people who do start focusing on this and start putting their eyes towards what they actually want in this life, this world is opening up and blossoming, even in a time and age where there's a lot of negativity surrounding the news and the day-to-day life.
Yeah. Well, cryptic, that's part of our, I guess, culture. We appeal to the guys that are probably more along the lines of self-reliance, and call it a prepper or whatever. Um, you know, Apparel's a super small part of that. It's more about the mentality and the philosophy of the brand and who they're behind to support it, that type of thing, versus some of the other options that are out there. But 100%, man, now's the time to go get good at the things that grandma and grandpa were good at, or great grandma and grandpa, and have them in your tool bag, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the future of Cryptech Holding? What if you guys were, you love where you're at, you love the niche. What I mean, I feel like the hunting community in itself is changing, and it is really evolving as it's moving forward. Is Cryptech, I don't know, needing to pivot, needing to lead the charge, or I feel like there's a division, and maybe my feelings are incorrect, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this idea of hunting because it's a privilege, and I can't stand when I hear people say hunting is a privilege versus hunting as a way of life and a means of sustenance and survival.
Well, within the industry, there's definitely paradigm shift and lines being drawn that, you know, are becoming more evident in the voice of the brand. Um, there's also challenges that you face when you decide to pick one side or the other. We are extremely pro Constitution, pro Second Amendment, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, or say the Pledge of Allegiance, stand for the national anthem. Um, Former soldiers, served our nation, love to hunt. Extremely pro police. We are extremely proud of the fact that all of Idaho State SWAT team all runs Cryptic combat gear, and there's also other SWAT teams, some in other states that aren't really friendly to anything that run our gear. But we're super proud of supporting the police. And when it comes down to the voice of brand, I've been kicking the balls pretty good this year on a few of these things. And, I went into this year very clear on where we're at, where we're going, and who we were going to stand with and represent. All those things that I just mentioned. And we've faced some challenges. Cryptic was banned on Facebook and Instagram because of the Capitol riots. And one of the characters that was in the Capitol riots was this zip tie guy. And if you look closely, he was wearing Cryptic Typhon combat uniform, top and bottom. And this dude was like the one that was jumping over the chair and had the zip ties on the side. Um, don't know him. Don't don't even have him in our database, but he was like front and center on every news outlet, MSNBC, CNN, you name it. He was there, and there was a lot of memes that were bouncing around on, various like Snapchat news and so on. And those memes were calling out what the guy was wearing. Um, He had a Black Rifle Coffee hat, and he had a Tennessee Pro Police patch and some other stuff. But we got caught up in that, and literally got our accounts completely shut down.
Mm.
And we had numerous deals like that where there's been a level of prejudice that we didn't expect, or I didn't expect. I mean, I didn't see other brands like Carhartt or Levi's or Nike or anybody get scrutinized the way we did. Um, and I've got numerous other examples like that. Where if you are pro Constitution, pro Second Amendment, and you're almost already on the domestic terrorist list. I mean, it's just bizarre, right?
Yeah.
Especially coming from the backgrounds that we have, where there's nothing that we love more than the United States of America. I mean, we put our lives on it, on the
Yeah.
line for
Yeah.
it, and sacrifice years and years away from our families that I'll never be able to go back and get. So Cryptic is a brand, is absolutely all those things. And at the end of the day, we're going to be boastful about it and proud about it. And that's who we are. And I'm pretty sure there's 90 million Americans that probably agree with me.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, if you're, pro American and you're not in the woke crowd, and it's not a privilege, and you don't have to eat a coyote because you just went out and shot it and depredated it. I don't, there's all these weird things that are in the space
Right.
that are like that doesn't make sense. Um, yeah. So sometimes I think that where the confusion comes, or maybe I've heard this before, is that um, it's not the truth at all, but sometimes I've heard that customers will say, "Oh, well, I can't wear Cryptic because I never served in the military." That couldn't be any further from what we want or design. This isn't, for guys that just served.
Mm.
This is for guys that love the America, love the Constitution. We do have the only camouflage patterns that have been extensively tested by the Department of Defense. They're selectively used by Spec Ops, and that are in the civilian hunting market. You know, After that, we do have major combat programs and tactical programs, but man, if you're a true red-blooded American and pro 2A, then and you have to gravitate and you have a choice, Cryptic's your brand, right?
100%. This is exactly why I wanted to, when it came to talking to any camouflage company, it was Cryptek. Without a doubt, hands down. I had 2 different Twitter accounts censored and removed this last year as a school teacher. And ironically, I'm navigating. So I've always, for the last 15 years, have been a physical education health teacher. And this year, navigating the vaccine mandate, I decided number one, I'm not taking it, and I'm never taking it, and I don't believe in wearing masks. I don't feel, what it represents for childhood trauma, but also for what it represents in the slippery slope of removing people's rights and freedoms. Well, when it comes to that, I ended up taking an online teaching position this year, and I took it without knowing what I was teaching. Turns out I'm teaching American history this year, and I'm actually getting to teach these students what the Constitution is all about, what the spirit of independence is all about, what they were really fighting for, and what we believe in, and what this nation is founded on. And it's so interesting. Our school district superintendent just put out an email that like critical race theory is not in our district and all this stuff. But I was clicking on some videos that were within our online textbook, and I was like, I can't show this. This goes completely against what I'm actually speaking about. And it's just so interesting that we are in a time and age where the lines have been drawn in the sand, and we are in a time of choosing. You being a military man, you have taken an oath to defend the Constitution against enemies both foreign and domestic. And here we are in a day and age where parents going to the school boards are considered terrorist threats.
How crazy is that? Like, it's so bizarre that we would be like even having a discussion about true patriots, true Americans, even be somewhat classified as domestic terrorism. Let me tell you, that within a lot of the cryptic art, there's a Roman numeral 3, and it has been there since day one. And it stood for the primary 3 focus areas of cryptic camo technologies, cryptic apparel, and cryptic adventures is what we called it, which was our hunts and filming and blogging and whatever else, the marketing side. Well, now, about the same time we came out, this 3% thing started to bubble. And there's this theory that, only 3% of the Americans actually stood up against the British and fought and won our independence. And that's where this whole Roman numeral 3 comes from. Well, now it's considered domestic terrorism. It's basically been classified as almost a swastika, right? And it's just crazy to me. It's absolutely bizarre to me that who defines that? And if you were to go to, I think it's the Southern Poverty Institute of Law, they track all these hate groups within the US. And now they have every militia in every state listed on that hate group watch, right? And within that, almost every state has the 3%ers of whatever. I'm sure there's the 3%ers of Washington. There's the 3%ers of Idaho. There's the 3%ers of Maine. There are 3%ers of everywhere. Well, it just so happens that's been on some of our patches and our art. And so I know of actual police that have been under investigation because they had a cryptic patch on. It's just crazy.
Wild times that we're living in. It's really interesting.
So check this out. I'll give you another one. We were subpoenaed by the FBI last winter. I guess it would have been in 2020. So yeah, 2020. They wanted to know how many cryptic Highlander hats that we had sold that had a Punisher logo on it from Chris Kyle and American flag. And so we started to interact with them. And the reason why was because these guys were wearing these hats at these statue teardown. They were the militias. The guys are coming out in open carry. And basically we told them, well, we don't make that hat. We don't decorate it. We sell a blank. And then anybody can take the hat and put their logo on it. They can put whatever they want on it. We have a blank program. You can put anything. A lot of construction companies do this, and various other brands. So we had to give them that response. But the point was that they wanted to know, because there was these groups that were protecting historical sites during the BLM marching that were wearing cryptic hats, and they wanted us to provide who we had sold them to. I'm like, our brand's wrapped into this thing, just serendipity. Of course, we're absolutely pro everything that we've been talking about here, but having critical race theory jammed down your throat and this whole woke crowd, even to the highest level of the GO officers within our U.S. military, is beyond me.
It's horrible.
It's absolutely angry.
At the end of the day, live and let live, right? If it's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and as long as we're not infringing on the rights of others in order to pursue those, then whatever. But don't be shoving stuff in my face and forcing me to, to inject my body against my own will, medical rape. I mean, at the end of the day, do you want me to hold your face down to some dog shit and be like, here, lick this? No, you have to lick this. Do it. That's, like, get out of here. It's ludicrous. And at the end of the day, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And it's time for us to, as humans, not even as Americans, because if you look, it's so crazy that America stands for what it stands for, and yet it seems like the people that are constitutionalists or are freedom-loving individuals are silent. And the crowd is waking up. But if you look at Australia and what's happening in these different countries all over the place, people are waiting for America to wake up. And they're realizing for the very first time why the Second Amendment is so powerful. Australia turned in all their weapons in the name of public shootings, mass shootings. Hey, if you want to hunt, that's fine. Check out a weapon, do all that. But you're no longer allowed to have a weapon. And now they're locking people down in their homes for for their entire day, and you better show your papers if you're going to go out. And oh, are you approved to be out here? And it's like, well, here you go. The Second Amendment is the linchpin to all of your other rights. And people need to wake up and understand that it's not about the type of weapon, it is about a weapon. And anything is better than nothing.
The ammo craze that started last spring, just when the pandemic kicked off, it still hasn't recoiled back. But people that are self-reliant and armed are just hoarding ammo. You've got more new gun owners than ever, just because they've been freaked out of their mind and can't even get ammo in many cases. I know I've heard stories about people going to the shelf, seeing what ammo's on the shelf, then determining what gun they're going to buy. You know,
Yes.
whoever thought we'd be at that place in our lives?
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. When you made the comment about nobody's standing up and nobody's taking lead, everybody, the world's waiting for America. I think that guys like us are still sitting back, going, "Is this real? Is this really happening?" Um, and Ultimately, they do have a large voice, specifically into the socialist media, that is the megaphone. Um, at the end of the day, I think that there are people that want action, but it's going to come really back to peaceful elections. And hopefully, this next round is meaningful with regards to who gets those seats in Congress. Um, I'm hopeful it is.
Well,
I'm hopeful we can get some common sense
if the
back
elections
in
are not
play.
stolen, you never know about that 3 a.m. dump, because that's the thing is like
Yeah, dude.
the ability for America to
That's
be
a
America hinges upon free and open and honest elections. The minute that you can't have 100% transparency, regardless of whether or not a small minority calls for cheating or a large populace calls that there was uh, untruthful counting or whatever it is, something you should be able to show it. Be like, here it is. This is what really happened, and that is a scary thing. I feel like, and yes, if our vote counted, if our vote counts and it's not manipulated, then yeah, 2022 and the House and the Senate, it should be a big red wave. Um, but who knows? But I
I
will
hope
say
so.
this for all the listeners out there: God's in control. I believe that all things work together for good, and for those that love God and are called according to His purpose. And at the end of the day, we just get to walk through it and continue keeping our head high and keeping our eyes focused on on what we want and the prize. And once again, it goes back to we get to control every moment of our lives and our day, and rather than getting sucked into this vortex of despair and hate. Butch,
100%.
Butch,
Yeah, for sure.
I really appreciate this conversation, and actually is making me want to come down to Eagle, Idaho, and buy you a beer and a drink and say, hey man, thanks for all you've done, not only for this country but for America and for the people in this world. Um, One of the questions I've really loved to ask all my guests is, what has hunting done for you? Because the creed of this podcast is that it transforms lives through primal adventure. So when we look back to it, yeah, you created an outdoor brand, a camo company, all these things. But what if you were to hang your hat on what hunting has done for you in your own life? The power that it has given you or you've taken from it. What has it done?
Well, I can't imagine life without it. Um, from a lot of different perspectives. Uh, it provides a platform for uh, education to family, to friends. The North American conservation model for the United States is extremely powerful. What Teddy Roosevelt stood up, and we are very blessed as a nation, just from what we have, from public lands to just hunting rights, and the Pittman Robinson Act. I don't think that a lot of these lefty tree hugging conservation groups can even begin to appreciate what hunters contribute from gun cells and ammo cells that then have second and third order effects into the bigger picture. Um, but for me personally, it's provided a venue for me to basically have common ground with like-minded people, friendships. I mean, I look at who my primary, close friends are, and I might not get to hunt with them ever or not very often. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a cultural aspect that can kind of sum up a lot of this discussion that really provides a conduit for like-minded people to gather around, and for the most part those people are also going to be truly patriots as well. So hunting for me, it's provided a business. Cryptic's gone from a concept to a hobby, uh, and from a hobby to a real business, and it's just been that overpowering passion that I've had for the outdoors that has really facilitated that. And it's not all balloons and confetti and fun. I mean, there's a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of mistakes we've made over the years. But it definitely is, you know, it's fun to be able to do something that you truly, truly are passionate about. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't imagine life without hunting, period. And it's interesting to meet somebody like you that just as recently as an adult gotten into it. So, that's super fascinating. The barrier of entry, you know,
The
that
barrier of
type of
entry
thing.
is extremely high, and
Yeah.
especially depending on certain what state you live in. Obviously the West and the public land is appealing because you have, if you want to learn how to hunt and you don't know where to hunt, well, there's always public land you can go to. But I also, as an adult, didn't realize that the same land that I was hiking on summer after summer after year was the same land I could be hunting on. And that was even coming
Mhm.
from somebody. I spent years working, selling backpacks at REI. I worked for REI for a long time. And I didn't even realize that those public lands were the same for hunting, as bird watchers, as nature lovers, as outdoors enthusiasts. And that in the education world and in the mentorship as conservation is speaking and advocating for these things and telling people that because what you learn in public education isn't going to get you what you need in this life. There, you got to go for it and realize it takes a community of support to get people to um, feel grounded and connected and successful. So I really appreciate it, Butch,
Yeah.
for your time, man. Any parting words before we wrap this bad boy up?
No, I appreciate you having me on. Uh, God bless America. And like you said, he's in control. And, guys like us will be around no matter what happens here in the near future. So, one way or the other, regardless how the elections go, be true to ourselves and stand for our convictions.
That's right. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And remember, it is the man in the arena. Don't worry about the other people. It is about the person who's actually going through it and trying and living and being. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. I'm going to have a link to Cryptek online in the show notes. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I have used a lot of their products over this last year and truly fallen in love with it. Be blessed, everybody. Be of good cheer. Know that life is happening for you, not to you. And as always, freedom on and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through Primal Adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.